Good afternoon and good evening to our Burmese friend Sanda. So she's the only one who is staying very late for us. Thanks for that. Sorry, but this panel will be in English because we didn't have the translation. We record the meeting, and tomorrow, thanks to the Forum for Mediterranean Journalists, there will be the registered discussion will be put on YouTube with the Italian translation. So those who who do not understand English, they can go to YouTube and listen to our discussion with subtitles in Italian. So we will accept also question and answer by those who are in this seminar. And it is for us, it's a pleasure and an honor to have this discussion today, because tomorrow is the International Day on violence against women. So it's we decided to have this discussion just before this appointment, and because one of the key points for us to underline is we want to turn the spotlights on the violence that the Burmese military uses and used in the previous dictatorship against Burmese women and Burmese people in the whole. We think it's very important to highlight the struggle of women against this dictatorship, and also the situation of the traditional situation of women in Myanmar. Because I tried to collect some data even before the new dictatorship, the global disparity index for Myanmar was that Myanmar was 147th country on 189. So it's a very high level of disparity, and it is one of the highest level in Southeast Asia. And also the maternal mortality rate is the highest in all Southeast Asia. But what is now important for us is to discuss about the nowadays situation, and as underlined by Commissioner Michelle Bachelet when she was commissioner, she presented a report on the violation of human rights in Myanmar, and she said that the military has carried out systematic violation of human rights, many of which amount to war crimes and crimes against humanity. And she said that the appalling extent and scope of the violation of international law suffered by the people of Myanmar require a firm, unified, and resolute international response, which unfortunately is not yet there. What we feel that this kind of violence and terror used by the military junta is very similar to the violence and terror used by the Russian army toward Ukrainian people and toward Ukrainian women, and the violence of the religious police in Iran against protesting women and youth. What we see is that the Myanmar Spring Revolution and the Iranian Women Revolution have a common objective of fighting for freedom, fighting for democracy, fighting for human rights, but also fighting for women freedom and gender empowerment to overcome the cultural, religious, misogynist culture that is present in Iran, but is also very present in Myanmar as well. And we are sure that the war crimes and the crimes against humanity that Michelle Bachelet has talked about, that are perpetrated on daily basis on the Burmese population and on women. We feel that these war crimes are totally ignored by the media and by the governments. There are many declarations, there are many positions taken. There are some governments who have adopted sanctions, particularly the EU and the US, but there is a lack of action by the UN Security Council. And so we think that even though Myanmar is a very important country under the geopolitical point of view, and it is at the center of a political and economic interests of China, Russia, India, and that supports the military junta, this situation is not really understood as much as it should be understood internationally. And we have to underline also that until now, government have delegated at the ASEAN to try to resolve the crisis in Myanmar, but ASEAN is a weak, divided coalition of Southeastern Asian governments, and they decided not to allow military junta politicians to their summit, but they enable the military junta representative to participate to other meetings. One of the most recent examples is the fact that the Air Force coordinating meeting will be chaired under the leadership of the Myanmar Air Force, which is a contradiction in terms, because something so important is led by those who are killing on daily basis, shooting and attacking the people of Burma and the people who are taking refugees in the villages. In Myanmar, women have been always struggling to have a say, even before this coup. But they are the first victims of complex internal ethnic conflicts, and above all by the military violence. We today, we have to underline that generally speaking, there is a climate of terror, of fear. There is a long blood trail of blood and destruction that caused 16,403 people in jail, brought in jail, and 2,533 people killed. That's a very high. These are very high numbers. Today we want to recall also the fact that after 2 years, because the 2 years will the deadline is in the next 1st of February 2023, but it's nearly 2 years of attacks. The backbone of the Spring Revolution against this dictatorship is made up by women, by young people, doctors, nurses, midwives, trade unionists, and workers. Most of them are young women. Pyo Sandaso is one of the leaders of the movement in Yangon. She has been risking her life until now, and that she's a hero, really a hero of what has been happening inside the country. Millions of these women refused to work with the military. Thousands of them formed an opposition, a non-violent opposition, which is very important to underline. Still, there is a strong non-violent opposition organized by mostly 60% of young women. They don't want just to fight against the military, but against this patriarchal, misogynist culture that are imposing these attacks to the people. And professional women have been really at the forefront. Nurses and doctors have been refusing to work for the military, but they have been continuing to serve until now for the people of Myanmar. We are helping some nurses and some dismissed workers, but it's a drop in the sea. There is a need to have a lot of funds to support this non-violent opposition, to support these women, and to bring humanitarian assistance directly to those who need this assistance, particularly women. There are more than 700,000 pregnant women who need help, and more than 1.3 million of children who need help. But this help is not provided because the military are taking, burning, and destroying the humanitarian assistance. So these are very important issues that we need to take into account. The fact that on one side there is a huge need of political and humanitarian support to this non-violent struggle. On the other side, that there is also the need to politically support, to give ideas, to exchange ideas with women who are involved in this front. Women workers have been at the forefront, as I said before, and still now they are fighting against the brands who work in Myanmar in violation of fundamental human and labor rights defined by the UN and by the ILO. There are more than 60 brands, European brands, who are working there despite the fact that workers are subject to forced labor, child labor, wages are less of €2 a day, and they have harassment, violence against women at factory level. So this is another important issue that we would like to raise together with what we should understand what kind of future we can build with the Myanmar women to build a new society. And this is the reason for we have, first of all, as I first discussed, Kinma Manyo, which is a Minister of Trade of the National Unity Government, but she has a long experience as a peace negotiator and gender balance strategies and training. So she has a long curricula and expertise on these issues. So I would like to give the floor to her, and I would like to ask to her, what, according to you, what kind of role you envisage for women in the new, we hope very soon, in the new federal democratic country? And what are you building? What are you working for as a government and together with the social organizations of Myanmar? So I would like to give the floor to you as a first discussant.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, especially the role of women for future Myanmar. Please kindly let me present with the let me let me share. Sorry, I'm not aware of the Google one. Yes, I got it now. So yes, please kindly let me recall the previous experience about women in politics in Myanmar, as well as women in peace process in Myanmar. Actually, if we look at the previous 10 years, there were a lot of attempts by women participating in constitution and electoral reform. Constitution and electoral reform started in 2013 in a struggle continue until 2019. In 2019, Myanmar voted to establish a committee to review the constitution and receive proposals for amendments, and a lot of women organizations participate in these attempts. So women organizations actively participated in constitution process in 2013 to 2014, and they have engaged in constitution awareness activities and reform advocacy. And I returned back to Myanmar in 2013 after 10 years in exile in UK. But since then, we participated in constitution reform issue along with other women and other political activists. And during 2019 constitutional reform process, women play active role in the amendment committee and parliamentary debate as well. And regarding the women rights, actually a lot of women organizations participated in women rights issue. And then even in October 2013, National Strategic Plan for the Advancement of Women was launched as well. And then on the peace violence, a lot of women organizations, including Gender Equality Network and then UN agency, they have drafted the protection and prevention of violence against women program bill, and there was a final review in 2020. And also the National Strategic Plan for the Advancement of Women was launched, and organizations are involved in this. And then also, if we look at the national politics, where a lot of women in the parliament, 2010 election, only were elected. 2012, 5% were elected. In 2015, 13% were elected as a woman. And so, well, all these in other process, I would like to highlight the women in peace process before the military coup. Actually, Myanmar peace process in 2011 and then 2021, and then this kind of peace process, a lot of peace architecture established in the peace architecture. The institution like Union Peace Making Central Committee, Union Peacemaking Working Committee, and then Nationwide Ceasefire Coordination Team, NCCT. All these institutions were established in 2012 to 13, and then in 2015, deed of commitment for peace and national reconciliation was signed, and then nationwide ceasefire agreement was signed later. In 2006, the government established National Reconciliation and Peace Center, as well as the Peace Commission. Within this structure, women participated. For example, from 2011 until 2013.
Can you speak slowly, because your line is not working very well, so we miss some of your words. If you
I see. Right. Okay. So yeah. Thank you. Thank you. So during the ceasefire negotiation from 2011 to 2015, women involved as technical and facilitating role in Myanmar peace process. And in 2011, peace delegation consists of 12 men. For Union Peacemaking Central Committee includes 11 men. 2012 Union Peacemaking Working Committee consists of 50 men and only 2 women. And then Nationwide Ceasefire Coordination Team consists of 15 men and 1 woman. And in 2016, NRPC and Peace Commission structure, there were no women participation. And for the GICM, well, actually there has no women. And for JMC, there was no woman at the union level, but other peace infrastructure involves some women. And especially during the first session of Union Peace Conference, 13% out of 700 delegates were women. In the second session, 16% were women. And during the third session, 20% were women. And during Union Peace Conference negotiation, women delegates play as discussant and negotiator. Yes, these are the women participating in Myanmar peace process, and the agreement given to women involving related to the Union Peace Conference include in establishing the Union based on democracy and federal system, no citizen of the Republic of the Union of Myanmar must be treated differently based on gender difference, and policy must be established for equality. Minimum of 30% involvement of women in each sector is to be encouraged. And in establishing a union based on democracy and federalism, Republic of Union of Myanmar is to establish and implement policy that prevent gender-based violence. And the other principle is to increase the capability of women to support gender equality. And so these are the situation of women participation in Myanmar peace process. In threat 1.5 and threat 2 process as well, women from civil society participated by supporting technical expertise, as well as women organization participated in dialogues, ethnic dialogue, region-based dialogue, and issue-based dialogue. They all have participated at the Union Level Committee, CSO, for Peace Forum as well. And also women participate at the community level as well for peacemaking and peace building efforts. Well, for about 10 years, actually, we have done, actually, a lot of women have contributed to Myanmar peace process, as well as Myanmar political situation to bring democracy and federalism in Myanmar. But unfortunately, there was the attempted coup happened in February 2021. And in 2021, the military in Myanmar took power by attempted coup by arresting democratic icon and state councillor and the president and other elected politicians. After the coup, the vision for democracy and federalism became complicated and conflict was enacted. So CRPH became involved to address the complication. Members of parliament who have won the election in 2020 established themselves as committee representing Piangsu Luto to resolutely perform those necessary activities and duties that have been entrusted upon us by the people to ensure the unconditional release of those detained, including the President of the Republic of the Union of Myanmar and the State Councillor, and to conduct the regular functions of the Piangsu Luto. Out of 20 representatives from CRPH, 3 women participated. And later in April 2021, National Unity Government was formed to serve as the official government of Myanmar to perform the duties during the interim period. At first, there were around 8 women involved in NUG as minister and deputy minister, and now in total, there are 6 women serving in the NUG government as minister and deputy minister. So the foreign minister, Dosima Aung, and then Susana Lalaso, Ministry of Women, Youth and Children Affairs, and Deputy Minister of Ministry of Women, Youth and Children Affairs as well, and then Deputy Minister for Education and Deputy Minister for Health, and then I myself working as the Minister of Commerce. So now, for the participation, around 6 women are actively involved in NUG government. And then CRPH and then NUCC. Actually, there is a federal democracy charter for the interim constitutional arrangement, and then we have 3 different kinds of period. And the first period is interim period, and then the second period will be transition period, and then after that there will be the federal period, and we will try to promote democracy and federalism through these periods. So now Ministry of Women, Youth and Children Affairs, they have the Directorate for Women and Gender Affairs to build an equal, independent, peaceful and just nation, to promote empowerment and women's leadership, to develop the Federal Democratic Union Constitution based upon principles of gender equality. And then they are doing some empowerment program on gender mainstreaming and women's safety and security based on the principle of equality, general equality and non-discrimination, no tolerance for violence, meaningful engagement, representation and leadership. This is the main ministry, the main focal ministry to promote women's rights. And then they have issued a lot of reports related to the experience of IDP women, youth and children in Myanmar after coup, as well as they have issued some newsletters for time to end system of impunity as well. And the Union Minister's speech, Deputy Minister representation, they promote a women representation at the international level. And also the Minister of Foreign Affairs, she is promoting democracy, human rights, and then federalism at the international level. And then also she as a woman, she represents the whole community of women to deal with the international community. And also under the leadership of Dr. Shwipo, who is the Deputy Minister of Health, she has contributed a lot. And then, now she is working towards to establish the system of universal health coverage, and then it will contribute a lot for the future health situation of the country. And also Chatrapan, she is the Deputy Minister of Education, and then she has done a lot of research, and then she is leading education and research as well as basic education, vocational education, and higher education, and she is doing for federal education reform in the country. And I myself, as Minister of Commerce, now we have drafted inclusive business policy, as well as we are doing promotion of equitable rights for women, and then also we are establishing a program for women's economic empowerment, and we have done MSME development center, especially for women and CDMOs, as well as we have done some e-commerce platform and enterprises promoting the products of women, and then we are dealing with some situation, especially the conflict affected situations in Myanmar, by promoting private sector development for the women. Thank you very much. So, well, actually,
Thanks a lot.
yes.
It's very comprehensive explanation of what women have been achieving before the coup, with a lot of struggle, because working on the peace negotiations has been very, very challenging, and also to set up the government with a gender approach perspective. So I think it's very interesting to give us the idea of what you are really doing for the people and for the women of Myanmar. I would like now to give the floor to Alessandra Schiavo. Alessandra Schiavo was a former Italian ambassador in Myanmar. She has been in Myanmar until last May. So she was there when the coup took place, and she was there during the first 1 year and a half of the coup, and also together with the pandemic situation of the COVID. So I would really like to ask Alessandra, what is her perspective or feeling as a woman, and also as a diplomat when the coup happened, and what your perspective, what you have felt, and what you could have been doing in that period until you left, and maybe now in your new dimension as Director General of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs responsible for Asia. So I think it's a very important testimony. Please have the floor.
Thank you very much, Jashira. Thank you so much also to you for your kind introduction. I also wish to extend my virtual greetings to my person that saw, as well as, of course, to Dottoressa Lancini and to all those online. I hope you can hear me well. I also wish to thank you, Dottoressa Breghi and Noi Rete Donne, for taking this initiative, which contributes to turn the spotlights back again on the Myanmar drama, which is still unfortunately unfolding each and every day in Myanmar since the 1st of February 2021, and the gravity and dimensions of which show no sign of improvement. On the contrary, they do continue to deteriorate each day, causing even more suffering to the people. The years that I spent in Myanmar are certainly among those who marked me the most. I think I wouldn't be the human being, the woman that I am today, if I didn't live in Myanmar. I didn't experience and witness the tragedy and the violence of the military, which cancelled, as we all know, the results of the previous elections, which were on the 8th of November, to which millions of people had participated enthusiastically, even if there was, as you rightly remembered, Shashira, the pandemic was ongoing, and so they as a challenge the fear of being catching the virus to be able to exercise their right to vote. While I speak, of course, many memories come back to my mind. I remember the bewilderment and the anxiety to which we all woke up in the middle of the night, and some people in the day after, of that unforgettable 1st of February. Many people were caught by surprise, despite the rumors and fears about a possible golpe, which had been anticipated already in some weeks and especially in the days before. It was like a wet blanket, like a doccia fredda in Italian. And most people, even among colleagues, even among diplomats and expats, thought that a military takeover would have not been possible, that after all, it would have been too anachronistic in 2021, when we all think we are very modern, and we think that the war is, let's say, does not belong to the human reality, whereas it does belong to the reality of mankind in many, many countries, and even now, within in Europe. And so many people thought that especially after 10 years of democratic transition, a golpe would have been too bad to happen, even in a country where democracy has always been, of course, very fragile because of the middle century of the military, let's say, dictatorship, which had existed between 1962 and more or less the year 2011, 2012. So I remember that the people on the very first days, but it just lasted a few days, were, I think, so surprised and so bewildered and so sad that in Yangon there was a surreal calm. Nobody was in the street, and probably they had to adjust to the new nightmare. And probably needed time to process what was happening, to metabolize the shock and understand what would have been the best reaction. Also because the entire previous leadership had been, let's say, beheaded because all the leaders had been arrested or forced to flee. And of course, this left the country virtually with no, leadership recognized by the people, and it further complicated, I think, the efforts, the organization efforts, and the response of the people. But this lasted really very, very short time. Because the youngsters, especially the youngsters, and among them many, many women and many youngers also, were very fast in getting organized by using social media or even the simple word of the mouth. And all of a sudden, thousands and then 100,000 and then millions of people literally invaded and flooded all the streets of each town and rural village. Because, of course, Myanmar is a country with several different levels, let's say, of income and economic progress. But let's say the desire to react was absolutely homogeneous and unanimous in all the country. And so they all took up the streets to protest against the coup, to proclaim their rights. And one of the also vivid memories I have is that every night for several months, I think it went on until May, if I'm correct, as a sign of protest at 8 p.m. sharp in each town and again each corner of the country would feel people banging the pots. It is a very old tradition which in Myanmar is used to chase away the bad spirits. And so, of course, it was very symbolic. It was to really to try to chase away, let's say, the golpe and its others, and the desire to protest against it was really adamant and resounded to the culture, to the local culture. I'm not sure if people, the people who are listening to us can imagine what it means, like, for example, in a country like Yangon, more or less, if you consider the core of Yangon or the whole region, it might be more or less like the size of Rome, in which, everybody's just banging pots and banging metals. It was really amazing. It was very powerful. It was resounding everywhere in the air. And again, it went on for months. And there was also only one song that you could hear, and it was the anthem of the Students' Revolution of 1988, a song whose title is, I hope our Myanmar friends will excuse me for the pronunciation, it was Kabar Makiebu, which means we will not be the whole title longer. We will not be satisfied until the end of the world, which means we will continue our struggle forever until it is necessary. and they're doing now, of course, also now. So by resuming the old battle song, let's say, of the 1988 revolutions, which, as we all know, was also violently repressed in blood, the new generation, the Z generation, I think wanted to express its frustration for having to resume the same struggle which had belonged to their parents, who already suffered and died for freedom, and also their profound frustration for feeling back to square one, to feeling, for feeling to have to resume that same battle, which in theory should have been finished with the start of the democratic transition in 2012. So it was, in a way, it was a way to express at the same time an old despair and a new resolve, because of course the trust had been broken forever. The trust that the democratic transition would have been possible in Myanmar was broken by the military takeover in 2021, just because it came after a democratic transition. So this is why I think one of the reasons why this coup was different than the previous ones. Now, it is important to say, I think, for people who are accustomed to live in our free societies, that singing a song or banging pots was enough to be arrested. Because otherwise, people might think that we're just talking about entertainment, about futile things like, beautiful things like music, while we're thinking really, we're talking about life or death, because it was, it was an incredible act of defiance to do so at a certain point. The martial law was established very soon. The martial law, of course, empowered, strengthened the powers of the military, so that, of course, they could arrest people without a warrant, for example. And to be arrested also means not to have any judicial guarantees whatsoever, or possibilities of a fair defense. And on 14th of February, the penal law was reformed, and the new law was adopted, which just in one day, or probably in 1 hour, very, very quickly, allowing introducing the penalty of 20 years of detention for whoever complicated the work of the security forces, or instigated fear or hatred or feelings of revolt with words, signs, or representations. So again, the importance of symbols and even of simple songs. And these were among the first liberticidal measures which were rapidly approved in those days, and that of course continue to be adopted with an increasing limitation of freedom of press, intimidation of journalists, arrest, controls on the internet, suspension of the internet connections, of regular telephone lines, and I mean you can imagine. And then the military, the security forces began actually to shoot against peaceful demonstrators, and of course that was the most tragic moment, but not only a moment. It still does happen, arresting arbitrarily hundreds and then thousands of people, especially youngsters, and also women. And I remember the shouts that it was possible to hear, the stunning grenades which were launched during the night in the residential districts to terrorize civilians, and even the snipers. So it soon became a nightmare, and it's still actually a nightmare. But what impressed me the most in this situation was the courage of the people. I already knew that Myanmar people can be very strong and very, very extremely determined and extremely proud. They are uncompromising. They are really very, very strong people, very ethically sound people. But even if I thought I knew them, I was in any case impressed by their courage, their strength, their resolve, and I think they would never give up their ideals. And among those people, as I said before, there were many, many youngers. Many demonstrators actually, looked like almost like children, also because Asian people very often look much younger than they are. And of course, but in the demonstrations also at the beginning, there were people of every age. There were young couples with children in their arms. There were old people, old women, old men, people middle age, and again, teenagers. And I think it was not by a happenstance if the first victim of the golpe was a young girl, Mate Tuekain, who was just 20 years old and was shot in her head on the 9th of February, then died some days before because of her injuries. And even younger was Chalsin, who was, just 19 years old, and she became famous. She was also wearing the T-shirts, and many people had at the time, precisely during COVID, with everything will be okay, written on it, and it was the 3rd of March, and that day, around 30 people were had fallen, and according to some other sources, 40 people. Then there were days also in which the number of victims was even higher, much higher, and again, it is something which still occurs on some occasions. So after almost 2 years after the golpe, and definitely more than 2 years after the last free elections in Myanmar, there are around almost 13,000 political prisoners in jail, and 2,600 of them are women, and 370 are minors. So people younger than 18 years old. Among those who have been sentenced to death, there are 9 women, at least on the basis of the information I have. Maybe our Myanmar speakers will have more updated numbers, but this is the info I have. And among the almost 1.5 million IDPs, in Myanmar, 70% or even 77% are women or very young girls. And among those almost 1.5 million of IDP, about 330,000 were IDPs who already existed before the golpe. All the others, were displaced after the military golpe, which again gives us the dimension of the tragedy in less than 2 years. Everyone knows, of course, that the leader of the NLD, Aung San Suu Kyi, the state councillor, is a lady, 77 years old, almost 20 trials which are ongoing or concluding against her. She's been condemned to 26 years of detention and 3 years of hard labor. As it has already been recalled, there are many in the Myanmar CSOs. There are many women who are very, very active, and of course their participation was increasing in the last times, and I'm sure will increase. And Myanmar will never be an accomplished democracy, full democracy, until all these women will have the same possibilities to exploit their potential, to see their rights protected and recognized, and to express their talents. And this is true for Myanmar and for many other countries. Even in the most advanced countries or in the democratic states, there are many studies which affirm that when you let the women who have studied, for example, to really have the profession they deserve, then there might be again a rise in the percentage of the GDP growth by 1 point. So 1%, which is of course a lot. And many women, as you said, Cecilia had, of course, joined very, very quickly the CDM movement since the very beginning, teaching in schools and clandestine schools, or ensuring medical care in sanitary or improvised sanitary structures. And very often, which is maybe striking, is that very often it is precisely in countries which are deeply rooted in traditions that women and girls become not only silent and docile, dumb and gentle witnesses of social evolutions, but true protagonists of revolutions, let's say powerful and unstoppable engines of profound transformations of societies and therefore also of politics. Before I conclude this remarks, and I'm afraid I will have, and I really apologize for that, I will have to leave in a short while. I would like to also to recall what many ordinary women and young girls did in Yangon and many other cities in those days, in the first weeks after the golpe, by hanging their lounges in their districts to prevent the army from entering their districts, because out of a popular and of course, absurd belief, it is to walk under women's clothes brings bad luck. And I think it is extremely powerful, and it also shows the power of creation that, especially young women in Myanmar were capable of. Normally, dictators paralyze people with fear. People tend not to move, not to be creative anymore when they feel that their life is threatened. But these young girls have, by doing so, have not managed to stop the army. Of course, the army at the end entered in their districts, unfortunately, all the same. But they did show how it is possible to revert discriminatory superstitions against those who feed them. That is to say, against those who nourish themselves of a culture which is based on unfair and unequal practices. This is what I wanted to, basically to say, and I thank you for this opportunity to pay a tribute to the courage of Myanmar women and young girls. And I'm sure we all hope that the terrible injustices that are being aware and are being conducted in Myanmar against the people will at the end, first of all, stop, of course, and then revert against their perpetrators in the sense that will be democratic accountability and peaceful accountability will be ensured, and that democracy will be able to be restored. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Alessandra, for this reminding us what has been happening in that period and what is continuing to happen now. I think it's important that we reminded that the martial law has been introduced, that changed the penal code with introducing high sanctions against everybody, the role of Generation Z, and also the fact that we have more than 2,600 women who have been killed by the military. I think also accountability is something that we have to keep in mind for the future. And just because you mentioned that, we are giving the floor to Pyo San So, and to me, that I know her since I think about 20 years, sort of. She has been, and she's one of the heroes.
In 2008.
2008, yeah, so it's not 20, but it's nearly. And she is really one of the hero women who are leading practically and risking the life to protect the Spring Revolution and to work for democracy and for workers' rights. So she's really one of the leaders of this fight. And so I would like to give the floor to her. She's leading this general strike movement, and also she's member of the ILO governing body. And this is very important. So she has an international responsibility in one of the most important UN agencies that try to promote decent work and democracy work. So please, Sanda, let us know what is the strategy of the trade unions, what is your role, what you have been doing until now.
Thank you very much, Sister Cecilia, for giving me the floor. And HE Ambassador and HE Siama Dokemama Mew, and our National Unity Government, and distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Mingalaba, greetings from Myanmar. So before I share
Secanda. We have also the ILO director of Italy, Mr. Rosas, Gianni Rosas, here with us. He has just arrived for you.
Good afternoon and good evening. Good evening.
Yes, good afternoon. Very good to meet you. Yeah, I am a board member of ITC. Very good to meet you. Yes. So before I share my experience in the revolution, let me introduce my background because Sister Cecilia and Italian trade unions, we have very long um, relation. So I joined trade union movement and democracy movement in 2006 when I was in Mesalt. I was a garment factory worker and working in a garment factory in Mesalt. And I did not understand very much about what is worker rights, what is human rights or political or anything at the time. And my mother federation trade unions at the time, FTUB, Federation of Trade Unions, Burma FTUB, came to my factory and organized me. Then I joined trade union movement and democracy movement when I was in Mesalt. Sister Cecilia and international brothers and sister, they train me. I have to say that they train me. So in the previous military dictatorship led by General Tan Shui, so we were fighting for democracy and human rights by applying ILO mechanism. So freedom of association and forced labor. We use ILO supervisory mechanism, and then we use ILO pressure against the military regime. Then in 2010, the country was changed to democratization. So we talked with President Tensei, former President Tensei, and then we will come back to the inside the country. We will work trade union activities inside the country, and that they allow. So we came back, and that they the civilian government, not 100% fully, but for certain level, democratic government, they enacted labor organization law 2011. So therefore, my federation and we came back inside the country in 2012, September 2012. So since then, we organize trade unions, we establish unions, and we operate trade union activities like in other countries. And I, uh, uh, I'm really proud to say that my confederation, my mother unit organization, we fully actively participated in the national tripartite body mechanism and for labor sector and democratization. So I'm really proud to say that we had a lot of expedition for country, especially in labor sector. So with my brothers and sister, we worked together. But unluckily, we faced this military coup. So before the military coup, under the civilian government, we had national tripartite body. I was a worker delegate there. So this national tripartite body is working for decent work country program and labor market governance. So very actively, we worked together, with the employers group and other stakeholders for the national development. And then I was a national social security board member as well, and and under the civilian government. So due to the military coup, we boycott and we withdraw from the all tripartite mechanism to protest against the military regime. So that's what we participated in the revolution. So, as you all know that we faced the military coup on the 1st of February 2011. So since then, we joined the revolution. So today, the topic is women participation in frontline for democracy. So I have to say that what is the meaning frontline to me? My understanding is There will be prominent people who speak out in public and fighting for human rights and democracy. So in public, so many people know them and that they are public figures, they are prominent leaders. But at the same time, as an underground movement, there are those who are unknown, act as the backbone behind the leaders. So I'm proud to say that Burmese women are leading in those places. I'm really proud. You know, inside the country in 2012, so as trade unionists, as trade unions organization, we organized women. We provided women empowerment training, gender equality training, and leadership training. So after 10 years, so we see the results. So in the fight for democracy and human rights and workers' rights, women are here, women are there and taking leadership role. So that's what we have done in the past. Now we are seeing the good results. And there are 5 major groups involved in this revolution. Number one is elected members of parliament, including the Union Representation Committee, CRPH. Our Union Minister, Dr. Mama Myo, she already mentioned about that. And then we also have political parties. So leading party is National League for Democracy. So members of National League for Democracy are fighting in this revolution as well. And then number 3 group is unions, like trade unions, student unions, and then women's civil society organizations, including youth and minority organizations. And then organizations related to the CDM movement. So civil disobedience movement, like Sister Cecilia mentioned, nurses, teachers, medical doctors, engineers, all sectors, women from all sectors join civil disobedience movement, and public sector workers as well. HE ambassador, she is a witness for us because she was in Yangon. She saw everything in person. And number 4 group is ethnic revolutionary organizations. And number 5 group is interim state, federal unit representative bodies and committees. So women are here in all groups. So we all are taking leadership role. In this spring revolution, the people who started the uprising at a good speed were the women garment workers. I'm really proud that, in Yangon on the 6th of February, garment factory workers started the good speed for the people uprising. And now in the revolution, the revolutionary forces are fighting the terrorist army in 6 ways: political way, economic sanctions, international pressure, military actions, people movement, and taking de facto power. So in all ways, our women are participating from leadership role. And women are participating. So let me tell you, share with you figures. So we have National Unity Consultative Council and UCC. 25% are women. So we have to try to increase the women participation in this body as well. And National Unity Government, Siama Kimama Myoshi already mentioned about that. But in all ways, women are participating very bravely. So therefore, the terrorist army has no mercy, and their retaliation is very aggressive against women. So if women are arrested, they are sexually harassed and tortured. Due to the security situation, women live in the neighborhood posing as husband and wife. We pretend husband and wife. And then the army, when they caught women, they declared illegal cohabitant. It causes the dignity of women protesters. So the military gender, they are putting pressure against, women like this in this Sweden. So according to the Assistant Association for Political Prisoners, AAPP, at least 307 women were killed. At least 2,620 were arrested. Women. So women are giving their lives for the revolution. And in this revolution, like HE ambassador said that women are not only, we are fighting for democracy and human rights and to remove the terrorist army. But at the same time, we are also fighting for oppressive norms against women in Burmese society. So my experience, I organized a peaceful demonstration in Hleran, Yangon, and one of the Lugerhat elders told me on the IW Day, International Women's Day, on the 8th of March 2021, we use women longes as flags for the protest. And then the local authorities, local people, elder people, they told me not to use women longes. So this is bad luck for the revolution. So we have to, change. Even in the revolution, we try to change people perspective for women. So we have a lot of oppressive norms against women in Burmese society. So we are changing at all times, even in the revolution. Right now, we are in the drafting process of the Federal Democratic Constitution, which guarantees national equality and self-determination. So women representatives are putting in women agenda and women rights. So gender equality in the Federal Democratic Constitution. So women have been trying to increase women participation in all sectors, structures. So women are decisive and determined. We will continue our fight till we win. So for my trade union movement, organizing is at the heart of the trade union. So we will organize women more, and then we will provide more empowerment program and then leadership program for women. So we will not give up our hope, our expectation. So we will fight till we win. So thank you very much for your paying attention, giving me the floor.
Thank you very much, Sanda. Your experience is very important for people to understand that you are with your hands and with your foot and with your body in the middle of a storm. And I think this is really very important to listen from not just experts, professors, doctors that speak from the sofa, but you speak from your experience or from your body and from your risking your life and risking your freedom. That's very important. And this is very nice that we have Francesca Lancini with us, because Francesca is an important observer. She's a journalist. She's a journalist since 2001, and she's an expert on international affairs and human rights on Asia, and particularly on Myanmar. And after all we have been listening today, after your experience, the big question in my mind is, how is it that despite this huge struggle, despite the fact that the big against freedom, against democracy, is not only the military junta in Myanmar, but it's China and Russia that are feeding the junta, that are financing and selling arms and selling weapons, helicopters, flights, airplanes to fight and to shoot against the villagers. How is it that such a similar situation as what is happening in Russia and what is happening in Iran is not taken into consideration by media. This is a big question. How is it that media, particularly Sandra and the trade unions have this huge experience of fighting against brands exploiting workers in Myanmar. We have more than 60 big brands in Myanmar. Zara, everybody is going shopping for Christmas now, and they have to know that Zara, H&M's, Guess, OVS, Lujo, Moschino, CNA, Adidas, and so on, they are exploiting the Myanmar workers because there is no freedom of association there. The workers are doing forced labor, and nobody's talking to them about that. It's impossible to penetrate the Italian media, for instance, on these issues, because brands are feeding the Italian media with publicity. And this is the big question for you, how we can overcome and how we can break this silence that is oppressing the Myanmar people.
Thank you, Cecilia. I'm very grateful to be here with the women from Myanmar and Alessandra Schiavo and you and the other listener. So it's a big question, but I'm very frustrated too, because when I started writing about Myanmar, Burma, ex-Burma, in 2001, 2002, in 2002 I was in a national newspaper, L'Unità, and during an internship I discovered, I was young, and this situation in Burma, Myanmar. And I said, why? In Italy, we don't know nearly anything. The only one journalist very, very interested in Asia, I think, is in my view, it was Tiziano Terzani, and I have his book. I learned a lot from him. And in the 1988, he went to Myanmar, to Burma, writing about the revolution, the first big protest of students. And he said, as every dictatorship, the Burmese junta doesn't like journalists. That's true. We know now it's very, very difficult. So in 1988, we could go to Myanmar, Burma to write and tell about Burma, but there were many problems. After the first revolution in 1988, during the 90s, we know the process and the fight of Aung San Suu Kyi, but there were some areas. I'm speaking about journalists. So there were 3 areas: the green area, the tourist area, and the gray area where you could go, but you should say you were not journalist, but find a way to see what's happening. And the black area. I want to say to the listener that Myanmar is a big country where there are 14 regions, we can say regions, where there are many tensions and conflicts. There were many mini civil wars. So in these areas, you couldn't go, or it was very difficult. But there's not any excuse because the perception of Myanmar, of Burma, during 20 years of work is very wrong. The perception of Burma in Italy, I think, is Myanmar is far. Okay, it's far. Is in Asia too is perceived like only for business, big business with China, and there are many stereotypes in our media, and so you must fight to tell about countries very important for many reasons. So it's true that now, after the coup, 1st February 2021, we can't go to Myanmar. No, we risk to be arrested. So that's tragical because we can't go. We know they freed some days ago some journalists, like a Japanese. And it's very difficult, and it was difficult also after the Rohingya persecutions. So the mass persecution started in the, 2012. This area. So now we are in a very difficult situation, because I know we want to tell, but we can't go. But we are guilty too. I was explaining, because our perception, I think, in our media, Italian media, is that this is a forgotten country. This it's a forgotten war. It's a forgotten revolution. But they don't understand that Myanmar is linked to us for many reasons. Some examples. In Myanmar, 74%, excuse me, sometimes I speak French, is the rare lands we made with the rare lands of Myanmar. Many of our technologies, telephone, iPhone, and everything, TV and screen, many technologies, because the 74% of the rare lands, the components of these technologies go from Myanmar, the mines and the lands of Myanmar, to China. In China, there are many of our companies, so they use these rare lands to make our beautiful gifts for Christmas and other birthdays and some many events. So this is only one example. The rare lands are very important. And another example, we have we love maybe the sailing boats, and but we know we have been known that the tech, the wood, the precious wood, the sailing boats are made with this tech. The tech come from Myanmar. The business is still linked to the country, this country, and not only. There are many other reasons, because I think in Myanmar, in Burma, there is the same situation in these terms of Ukraine and Iran, together with Ukraine and Iran. I want to specify. I don't want to. I don't like the classification of victims. This is awful for me. But together with the Ukrainian situation, resistance, and the Iranian revolution, there is the resistance and the revolution of people of Myanmar. In these terms, in Myanmar, the conflict is also between autocracy and democracy. Yes, a democracy that it was burning. It was at the beginning, but in nearly 2 years we lost everything. All the fight of these women, all the fight of these children, all the fight of these men, and it's very simple to be aware of Myanmar situation, to go to Google, to go to a social network. I can't say, I say Twitter, okay. I don't like a lot of Elon Musk, but whatever. You can see the videos of the Alessandra Schiavo, the ambassador, before talking about the music, the battery with pots in the night. It was an amazing situation. The people of Yangon did music, made music with pots to shout the suffering. It's very simple. So I want to say to the listener, I hope that they can listen, that it's very simple to be aware and to become sensitive to this tragic situation. Also, I would like to there is another country, I think. I want to quote Afghanistan. The Afghanistan. We forgotten too the Afghanistan situation. We spoke about this Afghanistan situation last year, and there is a link also with Myanmar in these terms. We know the drug trafficking. Myanmar, after Afghanistan, is the main exporter of heroin and drugs made with opium, but is the first in the world, in the planet, who is exporting the synthetic drugs. That's, I think, is impossible that we don't speak about that. Synthetic drugs, so methamphetamines, and they are a plug in Myanmar, in the country, but they are everywhere in the world, in the planet, in our Europe, in US, in Canada, in everywhere. And Myanmar is exporting these drugs after the the army is not able to fight this kind of traffic because there is a complex situation. The army, the dictatorship deals with the producers and the traffickers, and sometimes he blocks, but sometimes he deals to make quiet the traffickers and the warlords who traffic the drugs. And there is another example. Myanmar is a country, a nation full of mines of jade. The scandal of jade, diamonds, blood diamonds, and Cecilia Brighi can say a lot about that, about her fight against this awful situation in the past. So we are also bracelet, maybe, or everything ring and made by child and slaves. Because after the junta coup, the army coup, the situation is as they told before, it came back to 70 years ago when the junta took the power in the 1962. So another topic is how can we tell about Myanmar, because we can't go there now. Refugees or people like in exile or escaped or in the hide, like our women, wonderful women, are very important. We must listen to her, to them. And when I was writing, I have been writing about Myanmar and Burma in 20 years. I often talk about Khmer Rouge. So I know maybe the European listener or Italian listener can understand what's happening in Myanmar, telling about Khmer Rouge genocide of their people, because now that's the tragedy. The military, the dictatorship, the elite who is in the power, is very rich, is massacring, killing, and destroying everything in Myanmar. So they are destroying all the country. It's insane. It's insane. They are destroying the country because their reason is we in the central Myanmar, especially where the guerrilla and the militia and the resistance is very strong. They are destroying all the roads, for example. So now the aids, humanitarian aids, can't arrive. We are in the same situation, but we can't wait for 20 years, like the Khmer Rouge situation in the 90s and in the 70s, and so we have no time. We can do the same mistake. I hope the European Union can now listen to the refugees, because in the 70s they didn't listen enough, and they did the genocide. Yes, it's a different situation. It's not the same, but they are killing their people. They are destroying the country. The country is collapsing. The economy is. They can't work. They can't go to work. So the companies Cecilia quoted, they must understand these people can't work. They are not workers now. They are slaves. So if you want to ask something, Cecilia, maybe we can talk together, and because the topics are many, I think.
Thank you, Francesca. Yes, we have still 20 minutes for us. And I would like to remind that this seminar is going to be recorded and sent to YouTube, because meanwhile we have other 20 seminars taking place under the Forum of Mediterranean Journalists. So everybody will have the possibility to listen back to this seminar on YouTube. And I think that you raised serious issues. You made 5 examples for the Europeans and for internationally. One is the rare earths. Rare earths is very important, and we denounced that, and we asked, and we are asking still to the EU to ban the supply chain of rare earths from China, that is from Myanmar. There is not only an environmental disaster, but there is a human rights disaster in the Kachin area, where they extract rare earths. You mentioned teak. We also have been denouncing the import of teak through the triangulation. What is happening here that the EU has put sanctions on different companies and on different items, but through the triangle trade, they can still we import in Italy teak and other stuff. The problem is that the Italian custom do not look at that. There is not a supervision by the EU. We have denounced the presence of Danieli company, still a huge steel company, still working in Myanmar, but we cannot have any outcome of this complaint because there are a lot of authorities who close their eyes in front of that, putting business in front of human rights. You mentioned drugs and amphetamine. It's another big issue, and also the fact that all these brands I mentioned before, some of them are Italian, continue to produce in Myanmar in violation of workers' rights and human rights, and people do not know. People go shopping to OVS because the goods are cheap, but they don't know that OVS is working in Myanmar, same like Zara, H&M, and so on. So it's this exercise of talking also with the journalists is very important to put this country back to the attention of everybody. I would like to ask somebody who wants to take the floor and make questions. They can do if they want. And maybe Gianni wants to raise something. You can please. It will be very important. Gianni Rosas is the Director of Italy from the ILO.
Well, thank you very much, and good evening to everyone. I am sorry that I joined a bit later, but I was attending another seminar that was scheduled a long time ago. But thank you, first of all, to Cecilia and colleagues for organizing this discussion, and of course to the Assistant General Secretary, Sister Sana, for her very interesting and inspiring speech. What can I say? Well, first of all, I see that you have rightfully so framed this discussion in the context of the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. And in this regard, I must say that if fundamental principles and rights at work, like freedom of association or the abolition of forced labor, are violated, this is one of the worst forms of violence. The privation of democracy is certainly, how to say, the most evident manifestation of the fact that people, citizens, rights are violated, and there is violence and threats against them. But also, I must say that there is certainly even a double, how to say, a double burden, or how to say, the multiplication of violence and harassment that is targeted, because it's targeted against workers, and it's targeted against those who represent them. In the specific trade unions, activists are one of the main targets, and as Sister Sana may say, that's why they are forced to hide, not to be imprisoned or subject even to worse scenarios like having physical violence. And then there is certainly, again, a third, how to say, multiplication that is directed, as Sister Sana was saying, that is directly directed against women, against women trade union leaders, and against women workers. So I understand the discussion, and I must say that having been somehow a colleague, but also friend with Cecilia for a number of decades, the work that she does and her organization does is witnesses the importance of keeping high the the visibility of what's happening in Myanmar right now, and also of pushing to take action, including through getting more knowledge and understanding of the transmission channels that connect directly our country to Myanmar. And in this regard, what I would like to say is, if I can share this information, is that the ILO, the International Labour Organization, has established a few months ago a commission of inquiry for the examination and the decision on the measures to be taken, including sanctions, at least in terms of development cooperation and trade, as it happened during the former coup d'etat. So there is now a unit within the ILO formed by some of my colleagues who are assisting 2 judges and an advocate that have been appointed to inquire against the violation of the human rights and fundamental rights of workers, including the retaliation and reprisal of trade union activists. And of course, as Ms. Lancini said right now, people unfortunately do continue to work. The fact is that they work, but they are deprived of the freedom. So it falls entirely into what we call modern slavery and forced labor. So these situations are unacceptable and should take the precedence against any other type of consideration. Now, I understand that, and this is not, if I may say, from my own point of observation, their interest is still there by many Italians on the situation in Myanmar, on re-establishing the democratic principles there. Perhaps we are somehow, or our sisters and brothers in Myanmar are also, in inverted commas, victims of a number of conflicts that they have, came about recently. I mean, the conflict in Ukraine, the situation in Iran, the situation in Afghanistan. But this doesn't mean that we should give up in bringing up the issue before public opinion, the media, and also consumers themselves. When we talk about human rights, these are rights of the individual, regardless of where we are. There is no conflict which is better or worse in a country or the other. So this is one point that on which we should really continue to work and try to raise the profile and the attention. The other one, again, is perhaps connected to, don't want to say similar because don't want to compare, but when we talk about violation of worker rights, as the Assistant General Secretary may say, this is spread over so many countries and continents, and this also, I mean, it's something that needs to be addressed specifically within the context of the lack of deprivation of democracy, which is characterizing the situation in Myanmar right now. It has been devastating the country over the past nearly the past 2 years. So in this respect, I think that perhaps Cecilia, I say maybe a bit of also to get some homework. We should take action also as ILO office in Italy to spread a bit more widely the information on the decisions that have been taken in Geneva in order to exert somehow some pressures just by sharing the information and highlighting how unbearable the situation is for citizens in Myanmar, and even worse for those who fight and build their life on the objectives of ensuring fundamental rights of workers and ensuring that decent work is, so work with rights is guaranteed in Myanmar. So that is what I wanted to share with you, and I want to thank you because this also this discussion is a reminder also for us to be more present in spreading out and spreading over, the information on what's going on in Myanmar. Thank you.
Thanks. I took note, so I will knock at your door next week to start working on this. It's very important what you have said. It's very important that we start working to spread the information also on the activities of the ILO in Geneva with this commission of inquiry, which is crucial to me, and all the other activities that the ILO is doing on Myanmar, that has been doing. I personally was in the governing body when in the crucial time of the sanctions, so I appreciated a lot the complex work done, despite the difficulties of relating, having relations with the military junta. So I think this is a very important suggestion, and as I said, I will come back to you. We have only 8 minutes for us. Anybody else wants to raise issues, make questions, take the floor, is welcome.
I want to say just yes, there are now 68 journalists are in prison, and that's a very dangerous for them and for all the prisoners, political prisoners, opponents of the junta, because they risk everything. They risk to be killed, they risk execution, they risk everything. And that's a very pity, because in the last 10 years, many magazines, Burmese, Myanmarese magazines, and journalists I knew came back to Myanmar in 2012, early 2012. They came back because the road through democracy was going on, and they came back. I can quote the Mizima magazine, or Irrawaddy is the one of main river of Myanmar, and Irrawaddy, or Democratic Voice of Burma. And it's very easy to Google these magazines, because now many journalists escaped from Myanmar, or are in prison, or are in a hide place, and they going on writing and inform us about their situation. And and thanks to them, I have many testimonies, and many also about rapes against women, LGBT community, and homosexual, And I read about in prison, if they discover now, also before, because the rape for the military Tatmadaw, the army of Myanmar, has been an arm of war, a tool for 70 years, but now they're still using this the rape and violence and torture against LGBT community and women. A boy escaped from abuses, rape. He come from, he's an exponent of the LGBT community, and told the time his history, and so I would like that we we do attention to these people, to these because when we tell about Africa and the tragic situation in many countries in Africa, we are, I don't know, we can imagine that in Asia there is a kind of this situation, because when I speak with people, readers, listeners in Italy, they say, oh, Myanmar, oh, why? No, it's not possible. It's very close to Thailand. We go to holidays in Thailand. Why? No, it's not possible. So there is a kind of ignorance about Myanmar. So, and in the other hand, the media are a very few space for foreign affairs. It's true, Ukrainian, they are doing a good job, but during the last 15 years, the space on media and newspapers, TVs, and is very short or few, or it's not enough. So that's the situation. I can say that in France or in other countries, they are more careful about foreign affairs and human rights, also of Myanmar. Thank you.
Thank you, Francesca. Thank you for your some final comments. I would remind to everybody that this seminar has been organized by us with the Noi Rete Donne within the Forum of Mediterranean women journalists, that the registration with Italian subtitles will be published on. I think the discussion was quite good also because we focused on violence against women in Myanmar just one day before the International Day on Violence Against Women, and I think we have some more ideas on how to help the Burmese women and the democratic movement. I want just to raise a final remarks. My association Italia Birmania Insieme is a stroke. We need funds to support the Myanmar trade unions, to support the Myanmar women. We are starting a program to finance a delivery room in a small hospital in Karen state that serves 16 villages where refugees, thousands of refugees are there. They don't have any delivery room. They don't have any space for reproductive health information, and we want to raise funds for that. We are organizing on the 6th of December a concert in Rome to raise funds for this aim. And this is not a technical project. This is a project that tries to support those who fled, the midwives that are supporting the women that fled and are refugees or internally displaced people. And so it's a contribution to the movement. We are supporting dismissed workers together with the CTUM, the Trade Union of Myanmar, And I think it's very important that beyond the talks, beyond the declarations, there is a practical support, because if people of Myanmar are the key actors for the Spring Revolution, without our support, they cannot go very far. It is already 2 years that they are struggling, hiding in the jungle, hiding in small villages that are bombed by every day. And we cannot close our eyes. We need to help them, and we need to help them to bring back democracy and social justice, rule of law, and gender-based empowerment for the future. So I thank you, everybody, and I remind you, go to YouTube, I think from tomorrow, to get your Italian registration. Okay, thank you to everybody, and thank you to
Thank you.
to Kinna Magnon,
Thank you very much, Mr. Rosa Gianni and Sister Francesca and everybody. Thank you so much for all your solidarity.
yeah, and take care, everybody. Okay.
Thank
bye-bye.
you.
You too.
I will
Please take
send
care.
you the register. Okay, bye-bye. Take care.
Bye.
Ciao,
Giuseppe.
Bye.
ciao.
Siamo
Grazie.
qui, mamma, le chiamai chiusa
Thank
con
you.
siamo.
Goodbye.
Okay, Vasu,
Yeah.
Jesuba.
Goodbye. Goodbye.
Uh,
Goodbye, Giuseppe. Goodbye.
Bye bye. Bye
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
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 Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Ciao Cecilia, grazie.
Ciao, grazie a te. Ciao, ciao.